And welcome to Happening Out Television Network's LGBTQ debate and smackdown between the blue left and the red right as we prepare for the election of a lifetime. I'm your moderator, Al Ferguson, and as I anchor the world's first daily live gay news show, Q News Tonight. Thank you. And also, this is a live show, by the way, America. You're going to see all kinds of things. And also host of the most popular live LGBT information show in the world, It's Happening Out. Tonight, we are broadcasting this special edition of Gay Town Hall. On November 3rd, the most important election in LGBTQ history is going to take place. There are so many issues at stake. Where our community goes next for the next 4 years and then beyond. Tonight we are going to debate the questions our entire community believes are important. So let's begin with our LGBTQ debaters tonight. Let's begin with the blue and the left, representing Team Gay Town Hall. First up, we are broadcasting from the Sunshine Cathedral, the largest queer church in the world, and we thank them, and we are very happy of the Happening Out partnership with them. This is Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins. He is the senior minister of Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church. Darrell believes that following Jesus requires solidarity with the vulnerability per the Golden Rule. He has a passion for serving spiritual seekers in the LGBTQ plus community. Darrell is a graduate of both Union Theological Seminary and the Episcopal Divinity School. Welcome, Darrell. Next up is Dr. Ty Hauser. Dr. Hauser, he is from a very conservative part of Pennsylvania and attended Penn State University. He holds a PhD in literature, literacy, and linguistics from Florida Atlantic University. Dr. Hauser is an associate professor of English and Humanities at Broward College and has been a visiting professor of English at colleges and universities around the world, including long teaching stints in India, China, Spain, and Bolivia. Dr. Hauser is a weekly host of Gay Town Hall and can frequently be seen filling in with me on Q News Tonight. Welcome, Ty. Next is Taisha Best. They identify as queer, a femme presenting genderqueer, switch whose transformative healing is linked and connected to their personal life and work career. Taisha speaks and writes about sex, culture, politics, their right for racial justice, gender inclusivity, and accessibility. They enjoy creating spaces for Black, Indigenous people of color to celebrate their identities in empowering ways. Taisha is the founder of PACL, People of Color, Kink, and Leather Experience, and an online virtual resource hub that provides accessibility, space, and history for people that are sex-positive cultures. Outside of their cultural kink, Taisha makes her living as a flight attendant and continues to be an advocate for Black and queer folk. Welcome, Taisha. Now let's introduce the red and the right, representing Team #Walkaway. This is Brandon Strock. He is the founder of #Walkaway campaign. He is a former gay liberal and former Democratic Party supporter who has very publicly walked away from the political left and created a social movement, encouraging others to do the same. His original YouTube video of his decision to leave the Democratic Party went viral in May of 2018, launching this explosive movement, uniting Americans across all demographics to leave, in his opinion, the divisive left. Brandon frequently provides commentary on Fox News, is a recurring guest on Jeanine Pirro, Fox and Friends, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and many more. His hour-long in-depth interview with Mark Levin on Life, Liberty, and Levin exposed millions to Brandon Strock and the #Walkaway campaign. Brandon also provides conservative commentary for numerous television media outlets. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you.
Next is Blair White. She is an American YouTuber and political commentator.
Love you.
Describing her beliefs as center-right, she is a critic of third-wave feminism, activists she views as social justice warriors, and activist movements like Black Lives Matter. Welcome to our debate tonight.
Woo!
Next up is Mikey Harlow, and he is one of the leading conservative LGBTQ voices in America. Mikey proudly wears the monochrome of being banned from almost every social media platform at least once. And it seems that Twitter moderators shudder whenever they hear his name. He's like that troll that you see online every once in a while, except he's super gay. I love that. His voice represents a sizable portion of the LGBT community. Welcome to the debate tonight. So we first ask, why is Happening Out Television Network Vote 2020 important for the LGBTQ community? It is because the LGBTQ community could be a deciding factor in Florida and therefore the nation's overall election decision maker. As an estimated 11 million LGBTQ voters in America are at stake. GLAAD's polling nationally suggests that 74% of the LGBTQ community favors Biden-Harris, while 17% favors Trump-Pence. Whether the polls are right or not, a sizable percentage, tonight, a sizable percentage, up to 9% of our LGBTQ community has not made up their minds, and their voters could decide the election. Therefore, tonight, we are going to debate the issues that will help you reaffirm your choice for what will be important for America for the next 4 years and what will be important for the LGBTQ community for generations to come. Tonight is important, and we hope you have started watch parties right now to reach as many people as possible. Finally, the rules. There are some rules here tonight.
What?
First, as moderator, I hope not to be Fox News' Chris Wallace. Second, I hope our debaters tonight will not be what we watched in the presidential debate. We have agreed rules. I'm going to set up a topic and then ask a question that none of these representatives from either side have directly heard. Each side, red, right, team #walkaway, and blue, left, team Gay Town Hall, will alternate who goes first on my questions. The first speaker for each side will have 2 uninterrupted minutes. The second speaker for each side will have 1 uninterrupted minute, and then the third speaker for each side will have 30 uninterrupted seconds to close their side's smackdown argument. I will politely advise when time has expired. If necessary, I'm going to ring a bell, probably by raising my voice. And if it really becomes necessary, well, let's just hope it doesn't get to that. Finally, if warranted, I may, at my discretion, ask a follow-up question, and I will give both sides a single minute to answer my question. All parties in tonight's debate have agreed to my rules. While I do not discourage applause here live at the Sunshine Cathedral, we ask for no disruption. This is a live audience at the Sunshine Cathedral, and we again congratulate the largest queer church in the world for allowing an event like Vote 2020. So, that's it. That's the housekeeping. Welcome, participants. Welcome to the audience here in Fort Lauderdale, Wilton Manors, Florida. We affectionately always say it's the gayest place on planet Earth, and especially to the LGBTQ America watching across the world live right now. Let's begin. Our first question starts at the beginning. the state of LGBT culture in America. Once we were homosexuals, then gay, then LGBT, now we're LGBTQ. Queer culture seems to be how we define ourselves in America. But are you happy with these definitions? For the left, for the right, are you happy with LGBTQ America, our modern culture, and embracement of the term queer? Here's who is going to start, and that is #walkaway. Who's going first? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Should we go down one?
Sure.
Brandon.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to start off by saying that what's happening tonight I think is absolutely incredible. This is a historic thing that's never happened before. 2 different political sides in the LGBT community coming together to discuss the issue. So I want to thank everybody for showing up here tonight. And I definitely want to give a shout out to the audience. Especially everybody in the MAGA family who came to show up and support the LGBT community. We love you. The state of the LGBT community in our culture today. I think that we are in a very, very dark and divided place. For many of us who have walked away from the left, a lot of that decision is based really very much impactfully from what has happened within our community as well as exterior politics. One of the things that drove me away from the Democratic Party and from the political left from the very beginning was when our community began to, around the time of the Marriage Equality 2015 Supreme Court decision, it seemed like there became, to me, this was a moment of great victory for our community. We were passing a final hurdle, a final finish line where we should be celebrating. But instead, what happened next was that there was more infighting, more division, and seemingly more anger from within our community than ever before. Suddenly, we started splintering into racial division categories. Suddenly, we started hearing about different gender identity groups which never existed before. Suddenly, we needed to add more letters to the acronym so that we could keep the oppression industry alive, which are these groups that claim to be about social justice, but instead are about lining the pockets of CEOs who are making $250,000 to $500,000 salaries. And I cannot tell you how much that I object to being called queer in the strongest possible terms. It is derogatory, it is demeaning, and it is disgusting, and it is a word that is intentionally designed to keep us marginalized and to keep us on the fringe of society, when we should actually be celebrating the fact that we are now incredibly accepted and incredibly welcomed in today's society in 2020.
Thank you, Brandon. Now we move to Team Gay Town Hall, and we'll begin with Ty. 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Yeah, so again, I'd just like to echo, thank you all for showing up, Brandon, Mikey, and Brianna. Brianna, did I get that right?
Blair,
sorry.
it's okay.
Queen will do.
But no, thank you for coming. I do appreciate this opportunity to have this discussion. Thank you to our audience, and thank you to Sunshine Cathedral for hosting us. I do understand your issue with the word queer because I do know that kind of generationally, kind of on the playground, we're pointed at and we're said, oh, you're queer, and that's meant to be like a bullying thing. But I sort of have come to embrace that term as being maybe more all-encompassing, and it takes a while for these things to work themselves out in language. But the truth of the matter is that queer is the only word in our spectrum of identities that originated in English. It's the only word that comes to us from the English language. It comes from conversation. It was first introduced in 1826 by Sir Walter Scott, and then in 1894, Oscar Wilde was kind of our queer icon who popularized it as the way we talk about it. But as language goes, it takes a long time for these things to catch on. I do think I agree with you that we need to stop trying to find divisions within ourselves, but I do think that we need to find ways to respect, understand, and embrace our difference, because it's our difference that really makes us strong. It's our difference that makes us a community, and it's really our difference that helps us to better understand each other, better respect each other, and better move together as a group.
Okay, We're going to move back to hashtag walkaway for one uninterrupted moment. Who's going to be next? All right.
Yeah. So I take huge issue with the idea that the word queer somehow describes me. I've yet to hear it defined in a way that accurately describes me or my experience or my transition. If anything, I think when you transition, typically the old-fashioned way, you actually move out of the sort of queer LGBT world. So I have no problem with individual people saying, hi, queer defines me, but I do take issue with the fact that it's supposed to represent everyone within the community. And I would never call myself queer. And you know, the same community that is very, very strict about what we should be called, we're very passionate about, is that a slur, is that not a slur? It's interesting because I know you mentioned that the word queer used to be used to bully, but it was also used in killings of gay people and trans people. To me, it represents something much uglier, and it's actually defined in the dictionary as weird, strange, and unusual, which I don't think is the right messaging for our community.
Okay, and we move to Gay Town Hall and Darrell. One uninterrupted minute.
I love our culture. I came out in this culture. This culture saved me. This culture affirmed me. This culture helped me find who I was. And I am well, except for Al, who's older than everyone, I am the oldest person on this panel. And so my experience may be a little bit different, but I came out as queer in the 80s. And there's this word in Scripture that means unlike the others, and that word is holy. And so for me as a religious person, queer has always been synonymous with holy. I don't need anyone else to embrace it, but we do have a community that has a lot of letters, and Q is one of them. And our culture has been not just assimilation, but a lot of diversity. And that's a pretty queer reality in a world that values and almost insists upon assimilation. So queer works for me. I love that our community includes the word, and it's also inclusive enough that if that's not for you, there's a lot of letters in the alphabet. Choose yours and I'll celebrate it with you.
And America, I wish that you could see Darrell's socks because you would definitely think queer. And now back to hashtag walkaway and 30 final seconds.
The word queer like Blair said, if you look at the dictionary, it literally means worthless, suspicious, mentally unbalanced, or deranged. You cannot, as gay people had to do for so many decades, you cannot tell people that being gay is acceptable and normal and natural and then call yourself queer. And since we have become the queer community, it really speaks to the new direction that the mainstream LGBT community has taken. I personally think our culture is toxic at the moment. To me, it seems that the two tenets of mainstream Alphabet Inc. are control and conform. I was just the other night, actually, I was watching a comedy special.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. That's your
I have
30.
a point. I'll tell you later.
Okay, all right.
We'll talk.
And our final observation on this micro debate is Taisha.
Hi, I just want to recognize that the definition that you just gave has German roots, and we are talking about the English definition of queer. I do identify as queer. As the language and culture has evolved its meaning, as well as many of my fellow black and brown peers, I can understand that you don't want to identify as queer and you find something else more comfortable. However, just because you don't identify as queer doesn't mean you can degrade and erase the existence of an entire demographic, including some white people, that has their home there.
All right, that is our micro first debate on queer culture. We move into our next micro debate. Obama was the gay president. Biden came...
Back in the 80s.
Biden came to the LGBT acceptance even faster than Obama. But it seems we can't agree on who embraces the LGBTQ community and who are really wolves in sheep's clothing. So our topic debate number 2. The White House says they are the most pro-LGBTQ in history. Doesn't Trump's approach to trans and Pence saying gay is a choice prove they are homophobic and transphobic? And we are going to begin with Gay Town Hall and begin with Taisha.
Hi again. So I just want to talk about the actions of Trump and Pence. The HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, has an extensive list of anyone who is doing their due diligence and researching this information for themselves before they cast a vote. There is a list that depicts the amount of times that, when people the people across the aisle show up to the White House for their macaroni pictures, and their accolades, and then subsequently, later down the line, it always ends up that something is removed from the federal statutes that allow for the protection and safety of people that are under our LGBTQ umbrella. And I'm using Q, even though the other side would like it erased from the alphabet. So when we talk about opposition to, say, the Equality Act, as well as the removal of trans people from the military, as well as sexual assault language, as well as Title IX removal language, which is punished by removal of funding in schools. I don't think funding in schools removal is anywhere near appropriate, considering that there are so many disenfranchised children who struggle to even eat, let alone find an identity in their hallways where bullying runs rampant, not only in person and in line. I think that if the activists and the advocates were doing their job more, we would see more action taken on the legislative floor that is pro-LGBTQ than we see today.
All right, and then we move to hashtag walk away. Who's going to begin? Two minutes.
Okay, so the trans military ban was brought up, and I think there is a lot of things people don't know about that supposed ban. And I want to be very clear that only with people diagnosed with gender dysphoria are included in that ban. And as we know, some people who call themselves trans don't have that. And I will also say that the regulations and standards you have to meet to join the military are so insanely high. You can have a crooked pinky toe and they will not let you in. So I have yet to see anyone, since the existence of the trans ban, give a logical reason why gender dysphoria is something that is extremely debilitating, mentally debilitating, and often causes suicide, should pass the bar to be in the military. I don't think that's a good thing. I do, however, think that it's a bit too sweeping. I don't see a reason why they can't be cooks or coders, but in terms of the front lines, there was actually a Secretary of Defense memo sent to the president that spurred him barring trans people from the military, where it was actually an issue of efficiency, and trans people were compromising efficiency of missions. So it was actually at the request of the military to do this. It wasn't just Trump woke up one day and was like, you know what, I'm going to ban trans people. I've yet to hear an argument why people with gender dysphoria should be on the front lines. I mean, it's a harsh reality, but it's just the truth.
All right. Now for Gay Town Hall. Ty, you have 1 uninterrupted minute.
Sure, Blair. I'm really, really glad that you're able to understand and make a distinction between trans and gender dysphoria. But when we say the trans ban, trans people were also banned. So, I mean, you would have been banned. And I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's right. Now, at the same time, they said the same thing about black people before they allowed black people into the military, right? So these are things that over history we learn, and over history we need to adjust and change to. And the fact that the general said that it was not important to do the ban speaks loud to that. Actions and words matter. Trump never speaks about us, but he does act about us. The Equality Act, because of paternal and conscious rights, Lambda Legal said 39% of his judges, and the American Bar Association said they are not qualified because they are anti-LGBTQ. The Department of Justice, of course, the discrimination of trans. And one last point, after...
Thank you. And
There's a big difference between black and trans.
Hashtag walk away. You have 1 uninterrupted minute.
Big difference.
So first of all, I just want to say I cannot enlist in the military. I am banned. Now, people on the left would tell you that's because I'm gay. Oh, wait, no, it's because I have rods in my back, so I'm not fit. Now, you guys mentioned what Mike Pence said in the 90s. So if you want to go back to the 90s, let's look at what happened in the 90s. I remember it very well. That was when Joe Biden voted for supporting the federal ban on gay marriage, gay people serving in the military. It's also when he called gay people a threat to national security. But it seems like... And Trump has done many things. He has signed an initiative giving HIV prevention drugs for free to people without insurance. An initiative to where they have homosexuality overseas, to get rid of the criminalization of it. And you mentioned the groups like HRC. They told us that when he appointed Neil Gorsuch, it would be at the end of gay rights. And Gorsuch just a few weeks ago voted to criminalize workplace discrimination for LGBT people.
Thank you.
So that shows how you are being lied to by these groups like the HRC and GLAAD.
Back to Gay Town Hall. Final comments from Darrell, 30 uninterrupted seconds.
Well, we have 5 brilliant policy wonks and me. So I'm going to stay in my lane and talk about just religion for a moment, because I don't know what every person on the right feels about LGBTQ issues, but I know what Franklin Graham and Jerry Falwell Jr. and Robert Jeffress feel about LGBTQ people. They're very vocal about it, they're very hateful about us, and those are the religious voices that this administration has embraced, and that's what concerns me.
And Brandon, you have final comments, 30 uninterrupted seconds.
Taisha, I'm glad that you brought up the HRC again, because again, I want to mention that the executive director of the Human Rights Campaign is making over $500,000 salary by telling gay people that they're oppressed and by keeping the notion of oppression going on and on and on, even when it doesn't exist. But I do want to speak to you, Ty, about the trans ban, so-called trans ban. There are people who take nearly the identical therapies as trans people do, like people with low testosterone, people with early menopause who have to take hormone therapy. They're not allowed in the military. So giving transgender people the right to be in the military when they're taking the exact same treatments as other people is special rights for transgender people.
I didn't hear a clear answer from either side, so I'm going to exercise my privilege of asking a follow-up question. This will be the first follow-up question in the debate, and each side will have 1 minute. You will decide one person that will answer my question. Everybody understands? Since we began with Gay Town Hall, we will begin with you as the first to answer this question. The claim is that President Trump is the most pro-LGBTQ president in history. Is he or is he not? And you have 1 minute.
I don't need a minute, no.
I can go.
So even though we're talking a lot about trans military ban, and yes, menopause also does exist in cisgendered women who also goes through menopause while in the military, I also want to speak to the fact that they removed emergency protections for transgender people to make homeless people have shelter when in need, and that has nothing to do with joining the military. So if we're going to talk and go down to basic human rights, what we are asking for as people under the trans umbrella is food and a roof over our head, just like any American who wants that too.
And compelled speech.
Okay, now we're going to turn to #walkaway. Who's going to speak?
I can go.
Okay, the question is very clear.
Yeah.
President
I know.
Trump is the most pro-LGBTQ president in history because?
Yeah, I've written several articles with that exact title. So Trump is the first president to go into office supporting gay marriage. Not Obama, Trump. Trump launched a global campaign to decriminalize homosexuality across the globe and stated that to the UN, first president to ever do that. He secured a historic donation of free HIV medication for over 200,000 people, invested $716 million towards fighting the virus, pledged to cure the LGBT community of having to deal with this virus, and every year he's been in office, funding has increased. So, you know, I also have to say that I don't want to get caught up in trying to convince each side who's more pro, Biden or Trump, because at the end of the day, both sides have their problems with LGBT issues. What I would like to say is things are very much changing on the right, and people like us are changing it from the inside, which I think is very important. And objectively, on a pure number-to-number basis, there are more pro-LGBT things on the Trump side than Biden.
Thank you for both answers. That ends the micro debate on support of the LGBT community. We're going to move into micro debate number 3, debate topic 3, the Equality Act. The House has passed it. Senate Majority Leader McConnell won't even acknowledge it. But America has become much better for LGBT rights, and perhaps we don't even need to acknowledge it. But Americans have become much better for LGBT rights, and the passage of Equality Act may not be necessary in 2020. The LGBTQ community has not lost any rights, topic question, under Trump, and therefore, do we need the Equality Act? And we're going to start with #walkaway. Who is the first speaker? Brandon, and you have 2 uninterrupted minutes.
Sure. Well, I think that in order to really dive into this topic, we have to really, as a community, if we even are that anymore, and I very much disagree that we are, we have to come to terms with what we are actually calling gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. Because in today's day and age, it seems that a man can put on a dress and call himself trans. And so if we're going to sit around and accept now that this is a viable definition of LGBT, then I think it's completely unfair to expect employers in this country to have employees who tell them on a daily basis, these are my pronouns, these are the special words that you have to use when you address me. This is the way that I'm allowed to compel your speech, even though you're my employer. That I'm allowed to use whichever restroom I want, and sometimes my gender changes. Some days I'm male, some days I'm female. Sometimes it changes throughout the day. This is absurdity. It has nothing to do with being LGBT. And there is a reason why these gender identity radicals didn't exist before 2015, because again, it is an extension of the oppression industry. And so until the day comes that we as a community can sit down and really figure out what actually is LGBT anymore, I don't think we should be expecting other people to comply with what we're expecting them to do in the workplace.
And we move to Gay Town Hall, and for 2 uninterrupted minutes, Taisha, is the Equality Act necessary?
Right. So Brandon said they do have to sit down and figure it out. However, they've had since 1964 to sit down and figure it out and pass a bill, and I have not seen that from them. So when we want to talk about the Equality Act, we have to go back to 1964 to the Civil Rights Act, of which the reason why the Equality Act wanted to come into existence is one of the things that he did not talk about, which is to include marital status. And I know that the LGBTQ community celebrated the support of gay marriage. However, that is still not, as of right now, in an act as of right now. So when we talk about since 1974 and the subsequent years, like the 114th conference, so 2015 and 2017, the Democrats had repeatedly tried to work with those across the table to bring about a bill that would, even a compromising bill, that would support things like housing, rental, financial, sex, sexual orientation, marital status for everyone, regardless of if you're LGBTQ. And that is not something that we've had. So if you're wanting to sit down and learn what LGBTQ is, then also you should have spent that last 3 decades figuring out how to work with Democrats who have repeatedly voted for and tried to bring bills to the table and made your voice known then.
All right, and we move to Walkaway, who is going to be next for 1 uninterrupted minute. Thank you.
Okay, so if the Equality Act was as simple as telling employers, hi, you can't fire people just because they're gay or trans, I'd be all for it. I think that's completely, acceptable. However, it includes a lot more than that. It's very long. It includes forcing biological males to compete in women's sports, which has a lot of issues with that. We can go into that if we need to. It includes compelled speech with pronouns. And there's already a lot of stuff that has gone on because of these types of laws. Look at the cake baker. I forget which state he was from. I apologize. But that man thankfully won his case, but then another transgender person came after the gay person to harass him again. There's a precedent that's being set, and I don't feel comfortable with the Equality Act as it's written. I'm just going to say that.
All right. And we are going to move to Gay Town Hall, and 1 uninterrupted minute. Darrell.
You know what? I don't know that that there will be an Equality Act. We still don't have the ERA, so I don't know. What my crystal ball is on the fritz, but I do know that we will achieve our goals. It may be through community efforts. It may be through business. It may be through government. It may be through the courts. I mean, one way or another, we always seem to eventually. It takes way too long. We eventually get to what's right. So it's going to happen eventually somehow. But I also know that if you've ever had your humanity or dignity decided by a vote or a court ruling, you're a target, and targeted people need protection.
And to #walkaway and 30 uninterrupted seconds.
This is what I take total issue with, is telling especially young LGBT people, you're a target, there's a target on your back, everyone hates you. And that's not reflective of at least the reality I live in. Also, you're talking about the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I would like to point out that in the year 2000, Donald Trump was on the record supporting adding sexual orientation to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The Equality Act has so many problems, like Blair mentioned. There are a lot of concerns about religious freedom because tolerance has to be a two-way street. And we have seen in foreign countries what's already been happening with comedians going on trial for jokes, Bill C-16 in Canada, and and censorship. The LGBT community is so much on the forefront of censorship today. That's the last thing I think we need, is to give them the federal government behind them.
Thank you. In America, we remind you that you are watching live in the Sunshine Cathedral, the largest queer church in the world, here in Fort Lauderdale, Wilton Manors, Florida, the historic National LGBTQ Vote 2020 debate, sponsored by the Happening Out television network. That was mini debate number 3 about the Equality Act. It moves us on to...
Sorry, Al?
Sorry?
I didn't get my 30 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed time.
He does this shit to me all
Reclaiming my time.
time.
Every week.
We will finish with Dr. Ty Hauser.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
No, Mikey, I'm glad that you don't feel like you're a target, and that is certainly speaking to a privilege that you have that not many of my students have, right? Because my students come to me with a much different story. And if you want to talk about the 1965 Non-Discrimination Act, when Trump tried to have it overturned and the Supreme Court said no, he sat on the toilet and he tweeted, "The Supreme Court doesn't like me."
All right. That now ends our micro debate on topic 3 on the Equality Act. We're going to move on to our micro debate on topic 4. The next 4 years, and perhaps generations to come, are going to face the balance of court decisions on religious freedom versus LGBTQ civil rights. How will it be decided, and why is one more important than the other? Should a business, which is our debate topic, should a business be forced to decorate a wedding cake, as in the Masterpiece Cake Shop Supreme Court case? We're going to begin with Gay Town Hall, and our first speaker is Darrell.
Wow, my passion about cakes is not at the level I wish it were right now. It is wrong, of course, if you are in business to serve the public, to deny public because you don't like them. I'm pretty well versed in religion, and I don't know of any religion that prohibits you doing business with people. If people don't want to celebrate other people's marriages, they shouldn't be forced to do that. They shouldn't have to go to your wedding. They shouldn't have to perform your wedding. But cake is cake. So I don't know. I'm not as passionate about that as I want to be. But I am passionate about religious freedom not being used as religious tyranny. That just because I am free to worship how I want to call God what I want to pray how I want, I'm even free to preach against other people. I think that's a bad policy, but I'm free to do it. I'm not free, though, then to legislate my prejudices against people. The state should treat everyone equally. Yes, my religion can say all those other religions are going to hell, they're wrong, they're bad, but I shouldn't have influence over the state to make the state do that dirty work for me. So, yes, religious freedom, I benefit from it, I'm all for it, but religious freedom should never become religious tyranny over the people you just don't happen to like or agree with.
Thank you. Now to walk away, who's going to start? 2 minutes.
I think the crux of this issue is really the difference between a custom service and something where it doesn't matter. Because, of course, if somebody is bagging your groceries, what difference does it make if you're gay? Nobody supports that sort of discrimination. There's a big difference between a custom service, which is what the Masterpiece Cake Shop was really about. And everything here really just comes down to individual autonomy. Tolerance has to be a two-way street. I mean, I don't think that black wedding planners should be forced to plan a wedding for Klansmen. And yeah, we can all make those decisions. People say, why is it a big deal for a business to support gay people? Why would you want to give business to somebody who isn't down with that? I wouldn't just go to another bakery. And the implications... The implications of how else this can be applied. You know, Taisha, I don't think any of you guys would want to be forced to bake a MAGA cake, so.
Well, as it would work out now for 1 uninterrupted minute, Taisha gets to reply to that.
So I don't know how to bake. I know how to arm and disarm doors, so I don't want to bake a cake for you. However, if we are going to talk about customer service, I'm sure the black people that were sitting at the counter at Compton Cafeteria would disagree with what your statement said concerning customer service.
That wasn't a customer service,
They were asking for a customer service, and you know, this is just us repeating history and not remembering what history has taught us when it comes to separate but equal. We are asking for equity and equality, and that includes not repeating our past like we did when we asked black and colored people to use separate fountains and separate doorways in order to get the same food that we eat today.
Because those aren't custom services.
All right, and back to walk away, and you have 1 interrupted minute.
I'll start by saying that I would never want someone who dislikes me making food for me of any kind, okay? That's the first thing. And you know, there was this, I forget who mentioned it just now, but religious tyranny and religious people going out of their way to oppress perhaps the LGBT community. And while I'm wholeheartedly against that, and I grew up in a town where that was almost more common, I think we're starting to see a different trend, which is equally as disastrous. I mentioned before the baker who was forced to bake the gay cake. I mean, court was already settled on that. That's already over. But then after that, like I said, a trans person went and tried to harass him and do the same thing. So religious tyranny, bad. LGBT tyranny, bad. And I just, you know, I'm just echoing what Mikey said, that it has to be a two-way street, and this country was founded on religious liberties, and I would never want to compromise that.
All right. And to close the religion versus LGBT rights, 30 seconds, Ty.
Thank you so much, Al. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna cross over here a little bit and say I think I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying. I wouldn't ask someone who was anti-LGBTQ to make me a cake, and I don't imagine why you would want to. However, we have decided for some reason in this country that corporations and businesses are people, right? The Supreme Court said this. So if corporations and businesses are people, then we need to be treated like people by other people. And that's really all I have to say.
All right. And final argument in the debate, Brandon.
Yes, so again, the point needs to be repeated that we're talking about a customized service here. If a gay couple went into that same bakery and wanted to buy any other cake which wasn't a customized wedding cake, they would have been served just like anybody else. Your comparison, Taisha, is completely not apt. Because what you're talking about is black people being denied service based off of the fact that they're black. That's not what happened here. This person went into a religious cake baker's store. I only have 30 seconds, guys. This couple went into a religious cake baker's store and said, I want you to bake me a cake for a gay couple. I want a customized gay wedding cake. They could have bought any other cake on the shelves, and like Mikey said, let's let the free markets decide. Go get your cake somewhere else, and if people decide they don't want to support a baker who won't bake for gay people, the shop will close down.
You're right. You only had 30 seconds. Great. All right.
The gay cake's going to be better anyway.
That ends our mini debate 4. And for mini debate 5, we're going to stay on the Supreme Court for a moment. In 2015, the most significant LGBTQ moment since Stonewall occurred in a 5-4 decision for gay marriage. LGBTQ America thought the issue was resolved. We now learn in Thomas and Alito's warning in the last weeks that they possibly want to revisit the issue, that the court could change everything back. So we ask in our mini debate topic, what is at stake at the Supreme Court for the LGBTQ community? And we're going to start with hashtag walkaway. Who's first? 2 minutes.
I'll go first. I would have loved to have just taken the extra second to pull up the actual quote that those two justices said, so I'm going to have to paraphrase instead, because that's a complete misrepresentation of what actually happened. What Justice Alito said, and Justice, help me.
Thomas.
Thank you, said, was that they didn't believe that this is something that should have been decided in the courts, and they would have liked to have seen the democratic process decide this issue for everybody. They had the decision to see if they wanted to continue the case with Kim Davis. They said no. They felt that the court had made the right decision. So all they did was express that they felt that the Supreme Court had overreached what their actual purpose was in deciding this for everybody else. They did not say that gay marriage was wrong. They did not say that they wanted to repeal gay marriage. They didn't say that they hope that the case comes back to court so they can roll things back. They simply said that they didn't feel that it was proper for the court to make the decision at that time. Now, I happen to disagree with them. I think that marriage equality should be the law of the land. I'm glad the Supreme Court decided it, and I'm glad that we have equality. But that is their opinion, and that is not the same thing as them wanting to roll back gay marriage or indicating or signaling that that's what they plan to do.
And for Gay Town Hall, we'll start with Darrell. 2 minutes.
When the Supreme Court ruled that weekend on a Friday that marriage equality was the law of the land, the next day, my husband and I were married in this room. We'd already planned it. It wasn't thrown together. It just happened to work out that way, right? And it was a very meaningful moment. Our families were here. So this is something I really have skin in the game on. We met in seminary. He was just ending a 10-year stint in the U.S. Navy. He came in from a run, and when you see a running sailor, I mean, something happens to a gay man, right? So, and we met in seminary, and we've been together for 20 years, and now legally married for 5. So this is a very, very important issue to me. It's too important to me to try to parse intentions. I don't know if anyone on the Supreme Court wants to undo that historic and wonderful thing, but I know there are a lot of people in this country that are willing to use their time and resources and voices to try to persuade them and or Congress to undo it. And that is what I'm very aware of and very afraid of. That the people who talk a lot sometimes about family values aren't always interested in valuing my family.
Now we move to walk away, and who's going to speak? Okay, 1 minute.
That's a beautiful story, Reverend, but I didn't hear an answer after Brandon destroyed this talking point that Clarence Thomas and Alito want to undo gay marriage. So it's clearly not true. I would also like to point out that every single case from the Supreme Court, every single case involving gay rights, the swing vote deciding for it has been a Republican. And that's about it. Was Joe Biden, like I said, also, let's not forget, it was Joe Biden who voted for all of these things, voted to ban gay marriage, voted to ban people in the military. And it's amazing how they evolve the moment that polling evolves.
And to Gay Town Hall, Ty. 1 minute. Ty?
Taisha, I think.
Taisha, sorry.
Who also sometimes goes by Ty, so that's probably why we keep making this mistake. I definitely agree. It is accurate that the swing vote has decided a lot of laws that have helped LGBTQ. However, I would like to side with consistency, and the majority votes that have ruled in favor of us has been Democratic. I would not want to bet the farm on a statistic that maybe today a Republican person or someone who is conservative is going to rule in favor of my human rights. So it is also true what Brandon said about the quote, however, actions speak louder than words, and if your history and portfolio shows you supporting entities, corporations, and nonprofits that are anti-LGBTQ and anti-marriage, that speaks more than a tweet.
All right. And walk away, final argument.
I would like to say that it's very important to avoid fear-mongering towards the LGBT community. What I've seen the entirety of the Trump administration has been talking point after talking point after talking point about how our rights are being stripped away, trying to scare us into always voting Democrat, and I do not like that. There really is not... I thought I didn't have much to add to what Brandon said because he hit it on the nail, but I also will say that even if, and we're talking hypothetically because again, there's no rational reason to believe it's about to be overturned, even if it were to be turned over to a vote for the states and for the people, I think pretty much everyone would be in favor of gay marriage. It's hard to find two people to even debate this topic anymore. Everyone is okay with it.
Thank you. And final comments on the Supreme Court in gay marriage to Ty.
So, Brendan, I will address your comment on language. There is nothing that gets my nipples harder than legalese and philosophy. I agree.
Same.
I do agree with you on exactly what they said. That is what they said. The problem with what they said is that if we put it into states' rights, or if it leaves the Supreme Court, then what we're up against is a left and a right. And the right, definitely at their core and at their base, wants to overturn it. It's part of their platform.
No.
It's in the platform. Overturn.
Okay.
It's not
All right.
Trump's platform, it's Mitt Romney's
Remember,
platform.
We have agreed
And
rules.
the party
We've been
has
great
changed.
so far.
And polling recently showed
right.
that Trump voters overwhelmingly support gay marriage.
We've done really, really well. Let's continue doing really, really well. We're
not
going to
2010
move
anymore.
and continue to LGBT Vote 2020 issue, and it's about health care. LGBTQ health care is one of the greatest challenges for our community. The Supreme Court may doom Obamacare the week after the election, perhaps. Pre-existing condition clauses may be eliminated, and all of this in the heart of the greatest pandemic in a century. The debate topic, therefore, is what are the healthcare needs for the LGBTQ community? Can Obamacare be lost? And whose healthcare plan is better? And we're going to begin with Gay Town Hall and Taisha.
Yeah, so when I think of when the healthcare law passed under the Obama administration, the Affordable Care Act, not necessarily always need to be called the Obamacare Act, I just was gleeful at how many Black and brown people, especially those under LGBTQ who possibly could be homeless, would get affordable health care. And I remember that before the health care law passed, there was about 46 million Americans who was uninsured. And at some point, we got to a point to where 26 million were still about uninsured in 2017, I believe. So when we talk about the fact of what we want, this is a human right. You know, we are one of the only first world countries who does not have a healthcare system that is not rooted in capitalism. And so again, I'm asking for a bill that does not take away from what we already have, but complements what we should have already.
And to Walkaway, who's going to lead?
I will begin. It's interesting that you talk about how many Black and brown people still don't have health insurance, because if I recall correctly, Barack Obama was the president for 8 years and invented the Affordable Care Act. So that's weird. But I want to just take a minute because the question isn't actually about the black and brown community, it's about the LGBT community. So I want to talk about some of Trump's accomplishments in terms of healthcare for the LGBT community. This is the first president, and remember this is a Republican, guys, first president in the history of the United States that has said he wants to eradicate HIV in the United States. He wants to do it within 10 years, and this guy's going to get it done too. The Trump administration had launched a program to provide HIV prevention drug PrEP to uninsured patients for free. And so he's also allocated $291 million towards AIDS funding right here in the United States, an additional $291 million, which was for a fund called the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Research, or PEPFAR, which was created by another Republican, George Bush.
All right, and to Gay Town Hall and Terrell.
I am not a spokesperson for the ACA. In fact, I would much more prefer a single-payer system. So it's not that I'm in love with this, but it is what we have. And until you say this is exactly what we're offering that's as good or better, or maybe even not as good, just what is your plan? I've not seen that, not clearly articulated. And sometimes there will be an apologist that said, oh, what you missed was, here's all this great news that no one told you. But what we have is the ACA based on a plan in Massachusetts by a Republican governor. I don't have an issue with good ideas coming from either party. I am a member of a party by default, by the way, so because there's nothing left enough for me, and so I just have to pick one. But the ACA is what we have, and I don't want us to cancel what we have in the middle of a pandemic. And really, I don't want, in a country that aspires to greatness, to ever leave anyone out of health care for any reason ever.
And walk away. You have 30 seconds.
So this is something I hear constantly about the ACA. Trump and Republicans, they're taking your health care away. They're going to take your health care away. Let's talk about what took health care away from many people, because I know that I'm not the only one who's experienced this, but both of my parents are cancer survivors, and they lost their insurance because of the ACA. It got twice as expensive, then it got 3 times as expensive. And it turns out my mom, who is a survivor of brain cancer, actually couldn't keep the doctor who put her in remission. And also, if we're talking about healthcare in terms of LGBT people, I think we have to look at a lot of other things in terms of being healthy to ourselves, in terms of looking at our relationship with drugs, with sex, with many things. Those are things we really need to talk about at some point.
We're going to, wait, I kind of feel like an administrator at Twitter. We're going to move over to Gay Town Hall and Taisha.
Right, so when we talk about capitalism again, and also when, wait, I already went to this. Oh my God, you keep getting us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You just cannot talk.
Everyone's taking your turn. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
We
Thank
will
you.
not let you talk.
All right.
Ty.
Yes, Ty.
So, I totally lost my train of thought. Mikey, I think what you were doing was actually supporting what Darrell was saying, in that no system is the right system. We only have systems that we can build on and make better. And we need a plan to do that. And when I go to Trump's website and I look for his healthcare plan, there's nothing there. It's empty. So there is no plan. How do we take what we have and make it better? That's the only thing we can do.
Thank you, and that ends our micro debate on healthcare in the LGBT community.
Blair, you missed
I didn't say anything.
I'm looking at a teleprompter and a script, and that's why I'm having some trouble. I apologize. Blair, final comments.
I have to take note of the fear-mongering once again, because there's this talking point of healthcare is going away in the middle of a pandemic. And what's interesting is that there's not a single American, insured or uninsured right now, who is actually being denied coronavirus treatments. So that's not even a thing. And then in terms of LGBT, again, there's a lot of lies about healthcare as it relates to LGBT people. I know over the summer, right smack in the middle of Pride Month in June, there was articles being released about how Trump is removing healthcare for trans people. And first of all, I have healthcare, so there's that. But also, that was frankly a lie. That was actually overturned before Trump was even ever in office. Had nothing to do with Trump. Just wanted to say that.
Okay. Now we have ended the healthcare debate. Let's move on to LGBT Vote 2020 issue, talking about the peaceful transition of power. American democracy has been a bedrock on the principle of peaceful transition of power since our very beginning. In 2020, however, there is fear growing that this will not happen, as challenges are occurring on our voting process, on fraud, on conspiracy theories, and more, being openly discussed in the LGBTQ community. A new poll suggests that nearly half of all Americans believe the election process for November 3rd will not be fair, while 6 in 10 LGBTQ Americans believe that there will be violence in the streets after the election. So the topic of debate is, will the candidates, the political parties, and Americans accept election results and ensure a peaceful transition of power? And we're going to begin with Walkaway. Who's first? Okay.
I'd like to say that living in Los Angeles, my city's been burning since about June, and only one side is burning the city up. So I do expect there will be violence on election night, especially if Donald Trump wins, which hopefully. As far as the peaceful transition of power, I'm noticing all of these talking points about how Trump is not going to accept the results. Meanwhile, you have many figures like Hillary Clinton on the left saying that Biden should never concede the election under any circumstance. You're not hearing that from the other side. The most of what you heard from Trump is that he'll see what happens when it happens, because I think a lot of people, like the study you cited, don't feel confidence in this election cycle that's going to be fair. You have one side pushing for mass mail-in voting, which there have been multiple studies from Yale, from Harvard, lots of different places showing that that's just reeked with fraud, and we're seeing that play out in different counties across the country already. So I don't think a lot of people have confidence in what's going to happen November 3rd. I kind of don't, and I don't want there to be violence, but I do expect that as well.
Okay, and we're going to move to Gay Town Hall and begin with Ty.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that for this particular topic, I am not as concerned about this. I really think this is more fear-mongering and staging from the media and from the political theater. We have rules, we have things in place that kind of are meant to mitigate this kind of thing. Now, what will the people do? I have no idea. If the left wins, will the right become the good old boys with their guns? Maybe.
Nah.
If the right win, will the left become whatever it is we do? Sure, why not?
Antifa.
There'll be hot trans girls with guns.
But the point is that I think our government is strong enough that it will survive and persevere, and that the transition of power will happen. As commander-in-chief, his generals don't really have his back, so I don't think there will be a problem with them going and supporting a new president. At the same time, I like the fact that you bring up the voter fraud, because when I went to look for Trump's plan for healthcare, I did find a video that opens his page asking people to request their absentee ballots, which also are sent by mail, are also different from...
Very different.
Yeah, but sent by mail.
That doesn't really mean anything.
That's the
they're
fraud that you're
completely
talking
different.
about.
Okay.
One of them requires verification, the other doesn't.
Wait.
And Democrats were trying to get rid of signature
Wait.
verification, too.
Wait. Let's
not the same.
follow our rules. We're going to move back to Walkaway. Who's next? 1 minute.
I will go. The question is, will there be a peaceful transition of power? If Donald Trump gets elected, I think that there's no reason to assume so, because there still hasn't been a peaceful transition of power since Trump was elected in 2016. Until Donald Trump got elected, I didn't realize that mental illness was contagious. That's when we began to see everybody on the political left in this country. First it was the Russia collusion delusion. Then it was impeach, impeach, impeach. Now Nancy Pelosi's trying to say that he's not fit for office. It has been 4 years of refusal to admit that Donald Trump won a duly elected presidency. So we have absolutely no reason to assume that the Democrats will have a peaceful transition of power. Now on the flip side, we, after watching this circus for the last 4 years, have every reason to believe that the Democrats will cheat, because that's what they always do. And if we have evidence that they cheat, you bet your ass we're going to make sure that this election was won fairly and squarely.
Now to Gay Town Hall, Darrell.
I don't know if there's going to be a peaceful transition because there hasn't been a peaceful presidency. He hasn't presided with peace. He has
in the Middle East. Peace in the Middle East. Okay.
Not only do I have one uninterrupted minute, but I also have one word, Twitter. I am not listening to what other people are saying about him. I am listening to what he is saying, and he has spent 4 years antagonizing everybody. And that is such a, you may agree, Lou.
No, wait.
You may agree with what he says, but he does not say it in ways that are meant to be uniting or presidential. So it has not been a peaceful presidency. Whether he stays or goes, he will go or stay the way he has presided.
He's the first president since Reagan to not start a new war. That's peaceful. That's peaceful.
Not caused a war outside the country.
Please. I ask the audience, we have a live audience, America, we're at Sunshine Cathedral, the largest queer church in the world. We have a live audience representing both sides, both left and right. I ask the audience again to be respectful and polite. And you yelling is not respectful or polite. And this will be your only warning, and I assure you I have the ability to eject you out of this hall. Please, we are happy you're participating as long as you're respectful and polite. Now, from Darrell, we're going to move back to Walkaway. Who's next?
I can go. As Blair said, first president in nearly half a century to start no new wars. I've always been very anti-war, and that's something that's important to me. He's gotten multiple peace deals in the Middle East. He's been nominated for 3 Nobel, or is it 4 now? I think he just got nominated for another Nobel Peace Prize.
Too much winning.
Yeah, he's sick of winning. To talk again about mail-in ballots, in 2018, out of 42 million mail-in ballots cast, 10 million were unable to be tracked or verified. Recently in Paterson, New Jersey, 20% of mail-in ballots were thrown out. Years ago, Jimmy Carter did a commission showing that mail-in ballots were the most susceptible to fraud. Okay, sorry, with your fingers and your counting.
It was good fingers.
Oh, baby.
Right.
It's been a while.
And I'm oddly intrigued. All right, let's move to Gay Town Hall, and we're going to finish this debate with Taisha.
So we have talked about the external implosion that have happened. I want to talk about the things that Trump did have control of, which was the internal. When you have such a high amount of paranoia and anxiety in terms of loyalty, and you don't trust the product and the work of your government employees, of course you are going to compel them to either resign or quit. And so you have to also take in recognition that the inner workings of the government, the structure of the government itself, of which Trump controls, is also chaotic, and that is done by his own hand. And these structures is partly why COVID has been impossible to eradicate.
Thank you. All right, that ends our mini debate there. We move on. LGBT Vote 2020 issue. Let's talk about fake news. A free press has been a First Amendment hallmark of American democracy from the beginning. This national LGBTQ debate broadcast is proof of that. We hope you agree. But what is happening with our news? Fake news is a phrase that was never heard before 5 years ago. QAnon has been banned in social media for misinformation and spreading conspiracy theories. Entire networks seem to be platforms for our sides, and we are suggesting on both sides, not one or the other. Where is all of this going? Therefore, our topic debate is who is the LGBTQ community going to believe on where they get their news and who we trust to get our news from. And we're going to begin with Gay Town Hall and Ty.
I don't know. I sort of cut the cable cord about 10 years ago. I wasn't really interested in a 24-hour news cycle because I think basically what happens here is that the news cycle does two things. It tells us what we want, and it gives us what we want. And so in a lot of ways, we've created this fucked up disaster that we're living in terms of news. I don't think that any of the 24-hour news stations are getting it right. Now, here's something that's really important. The process of reading the news is a much different process from watching the news, because reading and writing are a reflexive process. When you read something, you're forced to think about it and digest it. When you write something, you're forced to formulate it and put it on a page. So if we want to get our news, we need to start paying attention to who we read, what we read, and how we reflect and write about those things so that we can come to a better understanding of what the information is we're digesting and how it's marred with non-facts. And just to finish up, just to get the dig in, Fox News successfully defended themselves as an entertainment channel.
Okay, and we move to Walk Away, who's going to begin for 2 minutes.
Sure, the question being, who should the LGBT community believe? Well, so the leftist liberal media in this country is truly the enemy of the people. Donald Trump couldn't have that more right when he said that. And I think what's so specific about this topic is it is the media that caused me to walk away from the political left. It is the media that caused me to walk away from the Democratic Party. You want to talk about conspiracy theories? You're concerned about QAnon? I'm concerned about CNN. I'm concerned about MSNBC. I'm concerned about the New York Times. These are the news sources that told us that Donald Trump mocked a disabled reporter. He did not. These are the news sources that told us that Donald Trump called all Mexicans rapists. He did not. These are the news sources that say that Donald Trump advocates for the sexual assault of all women, which he does not. And let me tell you something. If you're a member of the LGBT community, or if you are a member of the black or brown community, every little bit of news that you're getting that's filtered into your community is so filled with bias and slant, designed to control the way that you think, the way that you feel, which will ultimately control the way that you behave, which will ultimately control the way that you vote. It is nothing but pure manipulation and propaganda getting to our communities. Right now, if you asked me to leave this church, the way that, well, if I weren't a conservative, if I were a liberal, the way that the gay media would say was, gay man kicked out of church, gay man not allowed in church. It is specifically designed to make us think that we are victimized, that we are oppressed, that we live in a system that we cannot overcome, and it is nothing but complete lies and propaganda. If you really, really want to get educated, study numbers, study facts, go to the FBI website and look up statistics. Start learning and researching and doing for yourself, because the media is lying to you every single day.
We move to Gay Town Hall. Taisha, you have 1 minute.
Right, so I agree with Brandon. I don't want to be entertained. I want to be educated. And if we talk about education, we also have to talk about the down tickets, of which those are elected officials that create the educational structure that allows for us to do critical thinking, which is necessary, that even if you watch something on TV, that you have the self-discipline and the due diligence to do a fact check yourself and not always rely on either side of the news, whether it is viewed or watched. So what I am asking for is those who have not voted yet is to decide if we want to have the same institution that has had a conservative approach to our history and our inability to gain education over capitalism so that we can be the best informed electorate in this country.
Thank you. Fake news, we go back to Walk Away.
So to keep it as on topic as I can, in terms of where LGBT people can go to find news to trust, I'm going to say you don't go to Pink News. Ugh. You don't go to the HRC. You don't go to any of these gay websites. They are so defamatory towards people. I once did a debate with a pedophile posing as a transgender person named Jessica Yaniv. Pink News ran an article bashing me and defending this pedophile. They've covered events of Brandon and I's and Mikey's and I's, our walkaway events, and completely lied about why we were there, what we were doing, and what happened. We've had people enact violence upon us, and then the media reports it as us being the aggressors. Absolutely, almost everything you're digesting in terms of news is absolutely fake. And it wouldn't be so bad if it was at least a little bit not stacked against us, but when you have every single network, with the exception of sometimes Fox News going against us, it creates this environment where it's so toxic to even be a Trump supporter, and people are hiding. That's why we have a silent majority. And I think they're coming out November 3rd, though.
Yeah,
I think they're coming out November 3rd.
And to finish our debate on fake news, Darrell, 30 seconds.
There was a time in my youth where people read the news. There wasn't a lot of commentary. Someone just read, this happened, this happened, this happened. Experts say this may happen. Someone just read the news. Then there was commentary at the end, and if somebody didn't like the commentary, they got equal time and got to put their spin on it. And that was the news. News is now so commercialized that we don't get news. We get entertainment, we get opinion, we get commentary. And so I don't know the answer to that, but what I do is I read about 20 different things every morning, and I try to find something that seems reasonable out of all that. I don't trust any one source for anything.
Thank you. And final wrap-up from Walkaway.
Ty, you mentioned Fox News earlier, but it's one channel. Every other channel is Fox News for the left, and worse. According to Harvard University, 94% of media coverage of Trump is negative. Personally, I think that number sounds low. And, if we're talking about the term fake news that you say it didn't exist before Trump, let's talk about where that term came from. That term came from the Hillary Clinton campaign the day after she lost the election as an excuse and as a means of censoring the internet, because honestly, it's really been the internet that has killed leftism, because now we can all do our own research. So Trump brilliantly turned this around on them and said, oh, you want to talk about fake news? Let's talk about the real fake news.
Thank you. America, we remind you this is Happening Out Television Network, and we are broadcasting this historic national LGBTQ Vote 2020 debate here from the Sunshine Cathedral, the largest queer church in the world in Fort Lauderdale and Wilton Manors, Florida. We are broadcasting this. We started with the analysis first, and now this debate of these fine representatives in both left and right, and we're doing this commercial-free. There are no advertising revenues for this debate at all. So please allow me to give one commercial to this topic. We broadcast Queer News Tonight every night at 7 p.m. live, and we do news that affects the LGBTQ community. And please allow me, in relation to this conversation we've just had, to say we think we do it pretty well, because we will report what's going on that the left would say yay, but we also talk about what the right says, including extensive interviews with people like Roger Stone. And oh, by the way, when Brandon Straka was attacked verbally coming out of the White House, we reported on that too.
You did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we would say, LGBTQ community, we hope you give Q News tonight a look every night at 7 p.m. We try very hard not to be fake news. Let's continue, and we are going to focus on LGBTQ Vote 2020 issue on the state of COVID-19 and the stimulus package. The LGBTQ community has been disproportionately devastated by COVID-19. Why? A larger percentage of gay America works in hospitality, entertainment, and the travel industry, the hardest hit economic sectors for COVID-19. The House passed a nearly $3 trillion second stimulus months ago. The White House has had mixed messages and, frankly, has flip-flopped, and the Republican-controlled Senate has chosen not to help, arguing it's too much. And now they're not going to do anything before November 3rd. So, our debate topic is, what is next for COVID-19 emergency stimulus? And why are we in this situation for stalemate? We're going to begin with Walkaway. No, I'm sorry. Yes, we're going to begin with Walkaway. Who's first? For 2 minutes.
Could you quickly repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Why are we in a stalemate for the new stimulus package?
Well, yeah. I mean, largely this is because, well, first of all, I'm going to address that, but I want to go back to something you said about the LGBT community being disproportionately affected. I mean, this is the product of coincidence, and this is another example, once again, of trying to make it seem as though a marginalized minority community is being disproportionately affected by something. Look, we all choose the jobs we choose the careers we choose. If I chose to work in a coal mine, I'd probably have a better chance of getting cancer. If I chose to work in the military, I'd probably stand a better chance of getting killed in the battlefield than if I worked in a restaurant. But this is an unfortunate result that has happened to the service industry, and I have nothing but sympathy for anybody who's lost their job during the shutdown, which is why I volunteered my time traveling the country doing reopen rallies around the country to reopen America. I forgot the question again.
The second
The stimulus
stimulus.
package.
Why
Thank
are
you.
we in stalemate?
Right, we're at a stalemate because, once again, the Democrats are incapable of just presenting a bill that will help the American people in a time of crisis without padding it full of ridiculous things. Like $300 million to the endowment of the arts, an additional $300 million to the endowment of the humanities. That's $600 million that could go into the pockets of gay people from restaurants who are out of a job.
All right, and we turn to Gay Town Hall. Ty, we'll begin with you.
So just to be clear, those endowments actually employ people, so that money is going to employ people.
I don't think anybody's doing theater right now.
But
Please.
I think the theaters are shut down.
The point about the stimulus is that this is all election year politics back and forth, and it is the instability in the White House that's causing all of this. Who knows what the fuck is going on? Because Trump comes out and he says, well, not until I'm elected are we going to do this. And then he sits on the toilet at night and he says, oh, I'm going to give out $12,000 to everyone. And McConnell wakes up the next day and he goes, no, you're not. So they have no consistency, they have no conversation, they have no connection to what each of them are doing. Mnuchin and Pelosi are talking, at least. There's a lot of sticking points, and I don't know that they're going to come to a conclusion, but at least they're talking. It sounds like Mnuchin, though, just isn't talking to his president.
Ty, it's really simple.
Wait, no. We can't open that door. Are you finished?
You just construct a bill.
All right, wait.
Trump
We're
has
going to come back to walk away now. Who's next? You have 1 minute.
I can go. I'm going to echo what Brandon said about, these bills being padded with things that we do not need. I think that I disagree with Trump using the line, once I'm elected. I didn't like that personally. I think that was a bad move. But I will say, he's been begging Nancy Pelosi to take this seriously and come to the table with something real for months. So to completely ignore the left failing on almost every front when it comes to coronavirus, I mean, to imply that the right doesn't take coronavirus as seriously as the left, when the left has been out in the streets by the tens of thousands all summer, like I've been saying, it's finally started to die down now. I really take issue with that, because at the end of the day, like I said, when the left is out on the streets, by those numbers, there are people dying alone. There are people who are not able to throw funerals right now, not able to have birthday parties, people not able to go to work and to school. And I take huge issue with the fact that, with the assertion that one side takes it more seriously than the other. I don't believe it.
And to Gay Town Hall and Darrell. 1 minute.
I don't need to vilify individual personalities in the government, because there's just too many. I'd use up my minute if I tried to blame all the people that probably have messed things up on both sides. But I do know that other countries have responded more proactively, those with conservative governments like the United Kingdom, those with liberal governments like Canada, that both sides have somehow, all over the world, been able to provide stipends, medical care, shut down so people could be safe, but also make sure that nobody missed meals or got evicted or any of that sort of thing, that there are ways to deal with this. And whoever's fault it is on our side, I think there's blame to go around. We didn't take those useful measures, and it's not too late. I mean, I hope we'll do it yet, because we need to catch up with the rest of the world of not only containing this virus, but making sure we take care of people in the process.
And the final wrap up for Walkaway.
So let's not forget that this is not the first time Nancy Pelosi has done this. They know that they can hold this up forever and the media will report, oh, Trump is taking money away from you.
Yeah.
Let's also not forget that Trump is the one who said, I'm not waiting for Congress, and signed an extension on unemployment benefits. And even if you look back to the first stimulus, the things that Democrats wanted in it, something with emissions on airplanes, the amount of diversity on corporate boards, you may think that those are worthy causes, but they have nothing to do with the fact that people are sick.
Thank you. And final comments from Taisha.
Right, so for me, again, it's about structure, and Donald Trump can sign all of the executive orders that he wants, but if there's no structure to implement it, it's not going to get to us in time for us to continue our human rights. So I also want to say that, as someone who is a flight attendant who works in a service industry, we also have to think of capitalism. And we just saw an article about United Airlines saying that it's going to take till 2024 for them to recover economically. But because safety is my top priority, we have to be safe in order to spend that dollar, because if not, that is still going to affect the economy.
Thank you.
We don't need to be safe, we need to be free.
Conversation about the stimulus. We are going to move on to our next micro debate on LGBTQ Vote 2020, and the issue is racism and BLM in America. LGBTQ America learned in the last 4 years that racism still exists just beneath the surface of our country. In recent months, that has led to discussions on why the need for movements like Black Lives Matter, why white supremacist groups like Proud Boys have a platform, issues to...
They are not a white supremacist.
Please. Issues to defund the police, and are we a society of law and order? So, the debate topic is, where is America going on racism and BLM? And what should we be doing next? And we're going to begin with Gay Town Hall and Taisha.
Right, so when it comes to racial justice and racial inequality, I teach a lot of classes on this. And one of the first questions that I ask to a lot of these white majority classes is, how many of you have invited a black person in your home for a meal? How many of you have, when inviting black people in your home in a meal, asked them how they feel being black in America? Do you talk about race with this black person, or is it just a politically correct meal so that you can meet that quota of tokenism, so that you can say, I invited this black person over, he's my friend, and therefore everything is okay? So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, and again, a lot of these protests are organized by queer people, we also have to, again, look back at history, when I feel personally it's hypocritical if we can herald the Boston Tea Party as a protest for freedom, but call Black Lives Matter's terrorists for asking for them to be free to step out the door without undue process of being murdered in the streets and not being delivered justice. And so as someone who sits on this panel freely and with consent representing the black populace as a black person, I find it really hard to have conversations and see these opinions from people who do not look like me and don't share that lens and that reality of that fear walking out the house, and being troubled when I see a police officer down the street knowing that I could be racially profiled at any moment.
Please. All right, sorry. Are you done?
I have nothing further to say at this time.
We're going to move to Walkaway. Who's going to begin for 2 minutes?
I will go.
Okay.
So I just want to start by saying that I may not look like you, Taisha, but I'm just going to give you some numbers, and numbers have no color. They don't lie. So why don't we start with the fact that there are 328 million people in America. There are 41.4 million black people in America, which is 12.6% of the population. Yet 12.6% of the population is committing more than 50% of violent crime in this country. 9 unarmed black men were killed by police in 2019. 9 unarmed. Now, unarmed doesn't mean innocent. Unarmed doesn't mean not a threat. So last year, 0.00022% of the black population was an unarmed black person killed by the police. That is why we are burning America to the ground. That is why we are creating this false narrative of black people being attacked by police based off of 0.000022% of the black population. This represents 0.1% of all black homicides in the entire year of 2019. A police officer is 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black man than a black man is to be killed by a police officer. The number of unarmed black Americans killed by police is down 23% since 2015 when Barack Obama was the president. And 93% of black homicides are committed by other black Americans. So if you truly care about black lives, I suggest you get to Chicago, because every weekend dozens of black people are being killed by other black people. The Black Lives Matter movement is the greatest lie ever told, ever believed, and we are burning our country down for no reason whatsoever.
All right, and we move to Gay Town Hall and Ty.
So it's really, I mean, the numbers, I'm going to believe you because I don't know them, but sure, okay, I'll go with that. But what you miss is the nuance of symbolism. And the idea here is that this is not just, and I'm not going to comment on Black Lives Matter either, but this is not a reaction to one person dying. This is not a reaction to a series of individual events. This is a reaction to an entire culture that has not figured out how to solve the 1967 riots that we went through yet. We still haven't sorted through that racism, and it's boiling to the surface because of these symbolic events that are happening around the country.
You have an obligation to prove the
please,
racism.
please.
If you're going to burn this country to
That's
the ground,
not
you
the
have an
way this
obligation to
debate is
prove the
working,
racism.
Brandon.
19
And
white
you do
unarmed
not-
people were killed by police.
You do not help yourself
19,
in terms
twice
of
as
doing
many.
this, and I will continue to talk over you to drown you out if you do. Now we return to walk away, and we have 1 minute.
Okay, so I want to say that to Taisha, that it's a little odd to me that you would say that you feel uncomfortable hearing people who aren't black speak about black issues and Black Lives Matter, because every person on this stage had an opinion about trans rights and trans issues. I'm the only trans person. I didn't have an issue with it, because everyone should be able to speak about issues, not just black people on Black Lives Matter, especially when Black Lives Matter is causing disruptions and violence and burning in almost every major city in America. Everyone has the right to an opinion. And I will say it's very unfortunate, because I think that Black Lives Matter originally started out as a really good idea. It came from pain, it came from real pain, and I don't think anyone here wants to discredit that pain is real. However, all the facts Brandon listed are valid, and also, I think it's done a really unfortunate disservice. It's really turned people off from caring about these issues, because what you have is people sitting in the suburbs watching, these violent protests, because there are a lot of them and you cannot deny it, inching towards the suburbs closer and closer and closer, and it really shuts people off from understanding. And so I think that as a whole, while it may have been born out of a good idea, like I said, I think it's done way more damage to the black community, and that's why I'm so thankful that Trump has the Platinum Plan for his second term to invest in black communities, has done opportunity zones, and I want to know where all the billions of dollars Black Lives Matter has raised, where is that gone?
Yeah.
All right.
Where is it?
At the DNC.
Where is it?
We move back to Gay Town
Yeah, the
Hall.
Democrats, the DNC, the
And
DNC.
we're going to finish on your side with Darrell.
It is stunning to hear that any criticism of the sitting president is fake news, and any presentation of Black Lives Matters is the truth in the media, and that somehow that is the enemy. The truth is that there is systemic and deep-seated racism in this country. It was basically founded on racism. And as someone who is in a biracial and multi-ethnic family, there have been times that I honestly was afraid for a loved one to leave the house. And so this is a personal issue. It can't be dismissed with statistics or this news is real, but when you're talking about things I don't like, that's fake.
And we finish with your closing arguments.
So first of all, nobody said that criticism of the president is real or is fake news. We said that lies are fake news. You know, you had mentioned that it's a lot of queer, whatever that means, I hate that word, people organizing Black Lives Matter and stuff. Well, that's interesting because it is also Black Lives Matter activists who, when we went to Dallas and when we went to DC multiple times, have had their fists in our faces of gay men yelling faggot.
Right.
I don't see anyone on the left disowning that or anything. So yeah, I mean, there's been $2 billion in property damage. Crime has actually gone up in every single city that has conducted measures to defund the police. So yeah, sorry, the fingers are going.
There we go, the fingers. Thank you. All right. That ends our conversation about race in America. Let's move on. LGBT Vote 2020 issue. It gets pricklier from here. Transgender and gender identification issues. Trans is the focus of violence and lack of understanding in America. What are the definitions of non-binary, genderqueer, or fluid? Valid labels, are they valid for the LGBTQ community? As it relates to trans issues, does the confusion with America start in our own LGBTQ community? Do we even support our trans community? So it leads us to the topic, debate topic. What kind of transgender and other gender labels be considered valid for the LGBTQ community and America as a society as a whole? What kind of labels do we want for trans? And we're going to begin with Walkaway. Who's first? 2 minutes.
I guess I'll go. So I think just the label transsexual or transgender is good enough. I think when you start adding in 97 genders, when you start adding in a bunch of different identities, you can identify as a cup, you can identify as a walrus, that's when you start getting in the territory of making trans people look like absolute jokes. And I don't like that, obviously, as a trans person. I think that there's this ever-moving goalpost of what we define as trans. I mean, basically under the leftist definition of what transgender is, because they've completely abandoned the medical definition, which is having gender dysphoria and being a transsexual and then transitioning. That's the old school thing. The new school thing, basically the definition encompasses everyone. So congrats to everyone, you're all trans, because if you have even one feminine quality as a male, you're considered trans. If you're a boy who likes pink when you're 5 years old, suddenly you're on the path to starting hormones and transitioning. I think that's entirely problematic. And I think that in terms of if the wider LGBT community accepts trans people, I think for the most part, yeah. But I think they do a huge disservice to us when they speak for us. And again, they add on these 97 genders because it's just lunacy.
All right. And to Gay Town Hall, and we're going to begin with Darrell.
We will begin with Darrell because Darrell drew the short straw on this one. I am not a sociologist. But I do listen to what people tell me about their experience. And so I have learned so much about the umbrella terms and how much they include that I wouldn't have known before, just from people telling me their stories. So I bristle a little bit at the question, what should we allow, what should we find acceptable? I don't know. It seems like a ridiculous amount of assumed privilege to say we decide what's acceptable for people. You tell me your story, you tell me your experience, and I listen, and I try to be empathetic. I try to believe you. I try to get some sense of what your life is like that you're telling me. And so that there's this big, wide umbrella, this gender continuum that we're learning more and more. That's exciting to me. I'm not an expert to speak on it a lot, other than it is exciting that there is more and more to discover and more to learn. And now, because we do have an expanding and growing vocabulary, we can talk about it in more deeper ways. Used to, we had Butch and Nellie. Yes, I'm that old. We had Butch and Nellie, and we had a very limited vocabulary for very diverse and complex experiences. So I'm glad the vocabulary is growing. And what I want to do, rather than try to control the narrative, is just listen and learn more, because I think there's a lot more to learn.
And to Walkaway, 1 minute.
Yeah, I don't find it so exciting. Fact is, you know that being gay or being transgender are deeply authentic things because they've always existed. None of these other 97 genders existed 5 years ago. We never knew what any of these things were. And I've never heard one person tell me what they represent, what is non-binary, what is genderqueer, what are any of these things beyond interests, hobbies, and fashion choices, which I'm sorry, but we all have. Another thing is I have never seen one who is not a radical leftist. And amongst gay people, bisexual people, lesbians, transgender, you will see such a diversity of thought. Show me one non-binary, genderqueer, whatever, who isn't a radical leftist. So nobody can tell us what it is. And the thing that I think is interesting too is when you think about it, they actually have the most limited view on gender expression out of any of us, because they think that if a man likes pink or something like that, that makes you not a real man based on how you dress. And I don't believe that at all.
Interesting. And to Gay Town Hall, 1 minute to Taisha.
Right, so I want to talk about the fact that we're erasing the indigenous population because the two-spirit identity has existed for over a century, if not more. And so your lack of education does not mean that that identity should not or does not exist. So when we talk about transgender and language, I am like Daryl. Like, I remember reading the book Stone Butch Blues. I remember reading when there wasn't treatments for transition, and they were trans masculine, right? So that's like masculine of center of someone who was born as a woman. And so it is perfectly okay to feel fear due to your lack of knowledge. It's not okay to act on that fear, to discriminate, oppress, or harm someone in doing so. So my suggestion would be is to remain calm, hold your towel, like we say in those movies, and to keep updated on the education or ask a trans friend.
All right, and we wrap up from Walkaway.
Yeah, so I just want to make an announcement to any young people out there who might be watching tonight, because you're too young to know that once upon a time, gay people used to be fun. And they used to be cool, and they used to be edgy, and they didn't used to be stuck in a perpetual state of victimhood and anger and self-perceived oppression. And the only way to keep this narrative going, since we don't really experience that much homophobia in 2020, is to add all of these radical gender identities and these extra letters to our acronym. You know, back in the 80s, we had artists like Boy George, we had hair bands, and they were androgynous, and David Bowie, and everybody loved them. Everyone thought they were so cool, until the radical left decided that these were legitimate gender identities that required special pronouns to compel people's speech, so people had to comply and conform to everything that they wanted them to do, and that's when it became a tedious, hideous mess.
All right, and we finish our debate on gender identity with Ty.
I want to begin by quoting the great Eminem, "I am whatever you say I am." But I'd also like to quote La Cage aux Folles, "I am what I am." There's this idea of effability, and effability is about speaking. And when you speak something, it becomes a word, and that word identifies something, and that word communicates something. And as a person, I have agency. That agency is tied to my identity, and my identity is tied to the words that I use to identify myself, and I'm offended that you three think that you can deny people agency.
Okay.
No, please.
It's not us, it's reality.
So is Rachel Dolezal
We're moving
black?
on, as I indicated.
Is Rachel
I'm just
Dolezal
going to
black?
talk right over you exactly as what you're doing.
Trans
We're moving
age,
on, all right?
trans species.
Our next LGBT Vote 2020 issue is a topic about the vice president is the president. The vice president will be a heartbeat away from the oldest president in history, whoever wins the election. There is a high likelihood that the next vice president could be president of the United States. For the LGBTQ community, who makes the best president if the unthinkable happens? That is our debate topic. And we're going to begin that with Gay Town Hall and begin with Taisha.
Good evening, everyone, again. So my thoughts on this is this has been a question that has been raised every single election, and there has never been a time to where that kind of clause has fallen into place. So I don't want to invoke any fear-mongering. However, this is just basic due diligence of research in terms of the history and platforms of each of the vice presidencies, as well as the competency and their track record in terms of LGBTQ issues. And so this is not a question that is a priority for me in terms of what happens if the worst happens, because again, we're in the middle of COVID, and the worst to me has already happened in a sense, and we are still been in it for over like 7 months. If there was a time to where the inevitable rare cause, the first time ever that a vice president was to become president, I would think that checks and balances would allow for a more peaceful transition, as well as the opportunity for compromise, because we have disrupted the status quo, and in that sense, we can't return to normalcy. We have an opportunity to build a new and better wheel.
Okay, and walk away. You have 2 minutes.
So I know that it is something that hasn't really happened before, that the vice president becomes the president, but I think it might happen for the first time with Biden, because the guy's barely breathing. So, you know, it is. And I think it kind of was bewildering when they chose Kamala. She was the least popular candidate on the Dem side. So the fact that this woman is, as we say, a heartbeat away from the presidency is pretty scary if they're, to God forbid, win the election. But I guess if I had to pick, I would pick Pence. I'm not the hugest fan of him. But if you want to go just based off the performance we just saw at the vice presidential debate, I think he absolutely demolished her. I think he backed her into a corner. I think she couldn't answer many policy questions that Americans are actually concerned about. So, it's kind of an odd question, if I'm being honest, but I guess I would obviously pick Pence over Kamala.
All right, and to Gay Town Hall and to Ty.
I remember when Reagan was like failing in dementia, and we still didn't think that he was going to die in office. So this is like a brand new thing in our time. I hate the fact that we've got these two old white guys that really can't kind of sort themselves out as our only options. This is a problem with the two-party system. But at the same time, if I'm going to pick a vice president who says gay is a choice and therefore not a protected class, I wouldn't like myself if I did that. So I have to think that Kamala has to be the better choice, even if she pretends that she thinks we're real people, because Pence legitimately thinks we're not.
Do we only vote on LGBT issues? Do we care about anything else? I mean, there's so many policies I care about before LGBT issues.
Walk away is starting a minute.
You asked why this thing. Well, that's because you guys nominated a dementia patient. And the thing is, you're talking about what Pence said you didn't mention that was in the 1990s that Pence said that. Why do you take issue voting for a vice president who said something in the 1980s? He said something versus what Biden was doing in the 1980s. You suddenly have no problem when they're a Democrat knowing all of the things that he voted for. And the same thing applies on the issues that we were just talking about with Kamala Harris and with Joe Biden. We all know Kamala Harris's history in her refusing people DNA tests, in her keeping people for labor, in her keeping people on death row after she knew that they were innocent. And there's all this talk about the system is racist. They are the system. And then you guys want to give the system more power. Biden created this system, and Kamala Harris enforced the laws that he wrote. Whether it was the war on drugs, mass incarceration, or him passing laws that he wrote where he said the only thing we don't do in this bill is hang people for jaywalking. That's your beloved Democratic Party.
All right, and to wrap up the conversation on who will be the best vice president who becomes president, Darrell.
Senator Harris is now Senator Harris. Her prosecutorial record is when she was a prosecutor. Prosecutors prosecute the laws that they have. Legislators make laws. So there is a difference there. And Governor Pence, way more recent than the 90s, was very homophobic outwardly. That's a much more recent example. But for a lot of people, law and order is a racist dog whistle. If I were, and it's not a big issue for me, but if I were the big law and order person, I'd want the badass prosecutor who sits on the Senate Judicial Committee. That's the law and order candidate. So I think if that is my issue, Senator Harris is my candidate.
All right. And to end this debate, walk away. You have 30 seconds.
Right. So, we keep acting as though we've got two feeble, frail old men here, but what we actually have is one feeble, frail old man who can barely hang on. And can we just take a minute? I just got to ask. You don't have to answer. I can just look at your faces. How triggered were you when Trump survived coronavirus?
In 2 minutes.
How triggered?
He's dancing.
You must have been questioning if God really existed. I don't think we need to worry about a VP taking over for President Trump.
Brandon's time's up. I'll give any reply.
Having had a very bad case of coronavirus, I never wished it on anyone, and in fact, I did post about it in my social media that I don't wish it on anyone, and I certainly don't wish it on our president.
Yes.
So,
exactly. Right. Well, America, let me say again, this is Happening Out Television Network on behalf of Q News Tonight. It's Happening Out, the most popular live LGBTQ television show in the world. You are watching Gay Town Hall in this special edition of the National LGBT Vote 2020 debate. And if you can believe it, we have exhausted our 2 hours. We are finished. Now, I want to say in our closing, we would like to thank again Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins and all of the amazing staff at Sunshine Cathedral. I promise you, in the gayest place on planet Earth, this is a difficult task. It says heralding things about this organization, and I am sure #Walkaway would agree with us in terms of the support that Sunshine has done for this event. We have worked very hard to present both points of view, and we would like to thank all of the participants, our technical staff, our production staff, and everyone involved in this. I will also say to you, we have had an amazingly difficult week even in presenting this event because individuals and organizations, frankly, on both sides, didn't want this to happen.
On both sides?
On both sides.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
What, pretty sure?
Wait, and we've ended the debate.
I would bet.
So I want to suggest to America, the election of a lifetime is on our horizon now. It's Tuesday, November 3rd. You must register. You must vote early. And regardless of who you support, express your right to shape what will happen for years to come in the LGBTQ community. Vote for your brothers and your sisters and your non-binary people that do not even know yet that they are a member of our community or have not come out yet. Finally, approximately 9% of you tonight, the LGBTQ community, 9% of you are undecided as of tonight. It's time to decide. We hope our debate tonight has helped you. Listen, read, discuss, but above all else, exercise your greatest constitutional right of the American journey. Vote. I'm Al Ferguson, and I believe the LGBTQ community is going to decide the outcome of the election. Good night, America.